Andrew Yang es un empresario que fundó Venture for America, una organización no lucrativa que promueve empleos en ciudades que los necesitan mucho. Él aspira a convertirse en el primer estadounidense de origen asiático en llegar a la presidencia de este país. Démosle la bienvenida. Time to welcome the next Democratic candidate, entrepreneur, Andrew Yang. Pleasure to meet you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. Hello, California!
So, Mr. Yang, California, as you know, is the nation's largest fresh food producer. There are 700,000 farm workers in this state. Many of those jobs will be at risk in the coming years due to automation. And the same could be said of Florida, of Iowa, many places around this country. What specific steps would you take to help those thousands of farm workers with the adjustment to such a change?
I'm so glad you're raising the fact that technology will impact agricultural workers, because it will. And if you Google right now, you'll see there are robot strawberry pickers, there are robot machines now in use on farms around the country that are going to displace many, many workers. The goal should not be to try and forestall this progress. The goal should be to rewrite the rules of the economy so that it works for all of us. And my flagship proposal of a dividend of $1,000 a month for everyone in the country would help move the entire country forward and rewrite the rules so that we actually feel like participants in the gains of the 21st century economy, whereas right now more and more of us feel like we're being left behind.
Many of those workers, most of those workers actually are immigrants. How would you help them specifically?
Well, I'm the son of immigrants myself. My parents met as graduate students right here in California. And I know that immigrants make our country stronger, more dynamic, both economically and culturally. The people who are here in this country who've immigrated here for a better life, we need to create a path to citizenship for those people over the days to come so that they feel like they have a path forward and are integrated into our country. Right now, we're in a situation that to me is unsustainable. We can't pretend that we can somehow deport 12 million plus people without collapsing regional economies and being inhumane in a way that would be completely against our values. Oh, it's true. It's a complete fantasy. And so we have to try and move forward and integrate these 12 million plus people into our society over time.
Here in California, income inequality is particularly severe, so much so that people are actually leaving the state. How do you plan to address income inequality specifically?
Income inequality has been with our country for a long time. It's getting worse now because of the extreme winner-take-all nature of the 21st century economy. But Martin Luther King, in the 1960s, in 1967, was arguing for a guaranteed minimum income for all Americans. And Alaska, that's had a dividend in place for almost 40 years, has lower income inequality because everyone in Alaska is getting between $1,000 and $2,000 a year from oil money. And what I'm saying to the country is that what oil is to Alaska, technology is to the entire country. If we put a $1,000 dividend from the tech giants, who right now are not paying meaningful taxes, into our hands, we could ease income inequality immediately.
Now that you mentioned the tech giants, there seems to be a dispute between them, at least Twitter and Facebook. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey recently announced that his company will ban all paid political advertising. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, perhaps not surprisingly to some, said that his company will continue selling political ads, even if there's the risk of spreading false information. So who is right, according to Andrew Yang, Dorsey or Zuckerberg?
It's time for Facebook to grow up. They talk about being a world leader and a company that's actually trying to look out for the public interest, but they refuse to take responsibility for the truth of political advertisements on their platform. This is something that cable networks already have the ability to do. And Facebook should be held to the same standard. I think Twitter has it exactly right, and Facebook needs to mature if they're going to have a seat at the table.
Could you name 2 substantive reforms that you would try to put in place to regulate tech companies like Facebook?
I'm a parent. How many of you all are parents like me? I've got 2 young boys who are 4 and 7. And if you're a parent, then what concerns you could be what concerns me and my wife, Evelyn, where our kids are being hypnotized by these screens and smartphones. And it's making it so that we are seeing record levels of depression, anxiety, and worse among young people. So I'm proposing a new department of the attention economy that would get into the guts of the social media apps that are hypnotizing so many of our young people and recalibrate the design choices they're making so that the mental health of our kids comes before the profits of these tech companies.
You've also suggested recently taxing digital ads. Why is that approach better than actually regulating content while we figure out how to do things better? Stricter regulation.
I'm for a variety of approaches, but I think taxing these ads is a very, very efficient way to start having the public receive gains and revenue from the digital advertising industry in a way that we can use to invest in countermeasures that help protect our kids, that help support responsible journalism, that can start curbing the worst of the abuses in these tech companies. I'm someone who really likes to take some of the winnings and distribute them in a way that helps the public, and to me, taxing digital ads is a great way to do that.
We have a question from the audience. My colleague Ilia Calderon will help us with the audience.
Gracias, Leon. I'm here with Golden Sheard. She's studying political science at UCLA, and she has a question for you about political fairness.
Thank you so much. In 2013, the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act. Since then, more than half of the U.S. states have passed laws to make it harder for the young, the poor, and minorities to vote. How can you help ensure that elections are fair and no one in this country is denied the right to vote?
Thank you for the question. It's fundamental. We need to trust in our democracy and we need to trust in our young people. So first, I would appoint justices to the Supreme Court that believe in the principles of the fact that we need to let our young people have the ability to vote and not have states be able to push them away from the ballot box. I'm also for lowering the voting age to 16, because if you're 16 years old, you can pay taxes, you should have a say in what goes on in our country, you're going to be here for longer. And studies have shown that the younger you are when you first vote, the more likely you are to vote throughout your entire lifetime. We can make all of our high schools in the country political hotbeds, because if juniors and seniors could vote, then we'd be activating high schools around the country. And this would make it so that young people have a say consistently throughout their lives in adulthood.
Finally, homelessness is a severe problem in California. You're an original thinker and innovator. What can you do to help alleviate this problem?
Homelessness is a crisis not just in California, but around the country, though I think it is worse in California in many of your communities. And I've talked to people who are working to address homelessness at the ground level. And what they tell me is the first thing they try and figure out when they identify someone who's struggling and on the street is whether that person is entitled to any government benefits or revenues that they can then use to help get that person off the street and into a shelter. So under my flagship proposal of a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for every American, we'd all of a sudden have $12,000 a year to allocate to each person on the street to help get them into shelter, get them off of drugs, get them into a situation where they actually can start participating in our society again. This is the only way we're going to address the homelessness crisis, by putting massive resources to work. Because right now, what is the value of getting a homeless person off of the street and into shelter? It's unclear. We need to actually value every single human being. And then when there's someone who's on the street, we will know that if we help them, that actually has immense value for our society.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. Pleasure to meet you. Thank you for being with us.